Again, a very warm welcome to the Founder Fundamentals session on best practices in sales hosted by Space and the Markham Small Business Center. I'm Alina and I'm the Student and Community Engagement Coordinator at Space, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. For those who are joining us for the first time, I want to go over all the services and programs that Space has to offer. Space is York University's entrepreneurship hub, and it consists of several incubator and accelerator programs that are designed to support entrepreneurs like yourselves from different sectors. We also run diverse streams, the Space Ella program that supports women-led businesses, and the Black Entrepreneurship Alliance that supports Black-led businesses. Some of our staple programs include the Tech Accelerator Program, the Founder Fundamentals, and the Venture Catalyst. Of course, these programs are free and offered to the community to support and guide entrepreneurs. So I encourage you to take advantage of all the resources that are available to you. And you can also sign up for our newsletter to remain updated with our upcoming programs and events. I do want to remind you that if you attend at least 9 of these workshops, the Founder Fundamental workshops, you will receive an Innovation York certificate. And in order to get the certificate, you need to attend each session for at least an hour. You don't need to do anything at your end. Zoom will provide me with your login time and your sign out time. However, like I said earlier, please make sure that you're logged into your Zoom accounts with your full name. That way I'll be able to identify you, especially if you're joining from your phone, because sometimes it just says iPhone and the name of your phone, and I'm unable to figure out who has actually attended the session. So I really request you to make sure that you have your full name there. I also want to mention a couple of people and thank them because really they worked really hard behind the scenes to make sure that Founder Fundamental series is a great success. Particularly, I'd like to thank Nafis Ahmed, the Entrepreneurship Manager at Space. Nafis has worked really hard to source facilitators for the series and to develop the topic. So thank you so much, Nafis. I would also like to thank Jacob, who is our digital events co-op assistant, for helping me put together today's event. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our partners, the Markham Small Business Center, for providing their support with the series. And I'd like to welcome Fatma Sadrewala from the Markham Small Business Center on screen to say a few words with me.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Alina. Welcome to this workshop. This is a great one. I am here from the Markham Small Business Center. Only here to tell you about a couple of grant opportunities that we have at the City of Markham. So if anybody's interested, please do reach out to us. At the moment, we have the Digital Transformation Grant, which is available for the small businesses to help them grow digitally. It is for $2,500. We also have another one that is called CDAP, which is another grant that will help you to get into the digital realm. Apart from that, the City of Markham does host a lot of workshops and seminars that you can make use of, and all of these are for free of cost. So please reach out to us if you need any help or any further assistance, and we're here to help you out. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Fatma, for that. So before we begin our session, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules. So please make sure that your mic is muted while our facilitator is speaking. But if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat box, or you can raise your hands, and we will be taking questions as we go along. So you don't have to wait till the end of this session to ask the questions. We'll be taking it as we're going along. And now for tonight's session on best practices in sales, I would like to introduce our esteemed speaker, Arash Rahimpur. Arash has over 20 years of working experience in sales and business development across a wide range of industries, including finance, professional services, technology, telecom, and real estate. Arash joined Change Connect as a consultant, where he works with small to mid-sized B2B organizations to help them lay out an effective strategy, process, and action plan to deliver on their desired outcomes. He has a knack for understanding the needs of his clients and can translate those desires into clear strategic plans. He believes a hands-on approach in the most effective way for him to understand his clients' goals, challenges, and opportunities to ensure success. Arash, I welcome you to the Founder Fundamental series, and I, for one, am really excited and looking forward to the session.
Thank you so much for this lovely introduction, Alina. And thank you, Alina and Fatima, for welcoming me back to this wonderful program. I am excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to you guys about sales planning and anything to do with sales. Just to let everybody know, we do have a big chunk of the time dedicated at the end of the program for any questions that you might have, anything that is very specific to your business, to your situation. I am available. This is a great opportunity for you to pick my brains and get some insight from me. So let me first and foremost start by really showing you guys what the agenda is. I'm going to keep it very simple, really four little things. And to be fair, it's really three, because the first one is an introduction about myself. Now, of course, Alina did a really fantastic job in letting everyone know a little bit about me. But I thought I would, take a couple of minutes and tell you about me in, I guess, five little points. I think the first one has already been spoken about the idea that I've been in this business for 20 years in sales, in leadership, in coaching, and more. As Lena pointed to it, I have had the opportunity to work in a number of different industries, either directly myself or as part of a consultant working with them. And actually that list has expanded quite significantly over the last couple of years. Now, few more things that are a bit more fun to know about me. People consider me in my circle, of course, because you'd have to be in my circle to know this, but as a modern Persian Parisian MacGyver. Persian and Parisian because I am Persian from a background, and Parisian because I grew up in Paris for a good chunk of my life before coming to Canada. And why MacGyver is because of exactly anyone that knows MacGyver, anyone that's old enough, I should say that, to know MacGyver. I am very creative and innovative in problem solving. I actually really enjoy solving problem and coming up with really cool, innovative ways of getting me to where I needed to go. Married with children, both an indication of my personal life, as it is a show that I also really enjoyed watching growing up. If anyone knows that show, Ed O'Neill, Al Bundy, and all that stuff. But I have two kids, my son who's going to be 8 next year, and my daughter who turned 4 just a few months ago. And I've been with my wife, Jessica, for over 15 years now. I'm a lover of food, anything to do with food, from eating it, to making it, to ordering it, to taking pictures of it. I travel around food. I get excited about food. And I deeply believe that in some other life, I must have been a chef of sorts because of how much I love cooking and so forth. I also, family and friends are really at the core of who I am as a person. I love my friends. I love my family. They're pretty much the same thing to me, and couldn't imagine a life without them. And then for those who may not know what FFF stands for, it is the French Football Federation, football like soccer. And with the World Cup only days away, you can imagine that I am very excited to represent my country of France and really cheer on that team. We are the world champion, and hopefully we could continue being the world champion in a month from now. And finally, I think it's worth mentioning, but I love what I do. I love working with entrepreneurs. I love working with business professionals, business leaders, and helping them really solve their future challenges, their current challenges, using innovative problem solving, strategic leadership, and ultimately being a partner to my clients, regardless of where they are in the stages of their business. Two heads are always better than one. And when you're dealing with a modern Persian Parisian MacGyver, you know you're going to get some creative things that come out of those conversations. So that's probably a little bit more than you wanted to know about me today, but at least I think you guys have a good idea as to who I am. So let's jump into really why we're here. And it's about sales planning. Now, what is a sales plan? Of course, there are many ways of looking at what is a sales plan, but in a nutshell, a sales plan really lays out your objectives, high-level tactics, target audience, and really potential obstacles that you might face as a business and in the function of the selling. It's like really looking at a traditional business plan, but really focusing specifically on your sales strategy. Sort of like a business plan lays out your goals, and a sales plan really describes exactly how you'll make those happen. Kind of like a roadmap to getting you to your destination. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why do I really need one? What's the whole purpose of me having a sales plan if I have a business plan? Well, a few different reasons. First and foremost, it helps you communicate your company's goals and objectives. Communication is a big part in selling. And so if you think about it, you can't really expect your sales team, if you have a sales team, to really work well if they don't really know what your company's goals and objectives are. So it is necessary to really make sure that the goals are clear and realistic. And as they change over time, we want to make sure that we regularly communicate these strategies to your entire team. Now, when we talk about direction, it's really about providing a strategic direction, because a sales strategy is vital to selling your product or services. And really, to execute your plan, your company really needs to provide direction. Should your employee focus on email conversation versus social media conversion this quarter? Are you boosting your effort on LinkedIn instead of Facebook? Your business needs to provide your team with the guidance to be really effective. Along the lines of roles and responsibility, it helps in outlining what those are. And so your company's sales plan should really outline the roles and responsibilities for your sales team and leadership. Really, the benefits of this includes efficient task delegation, improved collaboration, even overlap reduction and increased accountability. When we don't know what our roles and responsibilities are, we tend to step on each other's feet. Sort of like, dancing with two left feet. Doesn't really help you. And so when we understand what those are, then it helps us to be a lot more effective in achieving the goals that we have set for ourselves. And the last thing as to why you need a sales plan, it's really around monitoring your sales progress, your sales team's progress, because your sales team is going to be the driving force behind your strategy. And when I say sales team, I fully understand that in your circumstances, maybe you yourself are your sales team and you don't actually have one. But at the end of the day, whether you are a founder that's leading the sales initiative, or you have a salesperson or sales team being the driving force behind your strategy, if they do well, so does the company. But unfortunately, the alternative is also correct. Monitoring your team's progress on organizational goals really allows you to manage your objectives. It really ensures that you have the people and the tools in place to be successful. Now, the sales planning process is actually a 9-step process, as you see them there. But instead of sort of looking at them the way they are given to you there, let's dive into each one into much greater detail. So step 1 is about gathering sales data and searching for trends. It's really to plan for the present and the future. You got to think about your company needing to look to the past. What did sales look like during the previous year? What about the last few years? Now, using this information can really help you identify trends in your industry. While it's not a foolproof process, it does help you establish a foundation for your sales planning process. Step 2 is about defining your objectives. Now, how do we know that your business is doing well if we have no goals? As you can tell from the fact that this is step 2 in this process, its placement on sort of this 9-step list really is indicative of its importance. Really defining your goals and objectives is one of the first steps that you should take in your sales planning process. And really, once you have them defined, you can move forward with executing them. Otherwise, you're just moving into dark space without really knowing where you're going. Step 3 is about determining the metrics for success. The reality is that in a group of 40 plus individuals on this call, each one of your businesses, for the most part, is going to be different. The one thing that we could all agree on, though, is that you need metrics for success. And these metrics are what we call key performance indicators, or KPIs. And what are you going to use to determine if your business is successful? There are a lot of KPIs out there that really give you a understanding of your performance and success. And so KPIs really are different based on, well, your medium, based on standard metrics and things of that nature. But know that there are certain elements that you can take advantage of. There's set metrics and KPIs that immediately can provide you with some ideas on how you are doing. Things like gross profit margins, return on investment, conversion rates, et cetera, really help you in better understanding how far or how close you are to achieving the goals that you have set for yourself and really determining how to proceed next. Step 4 is assessing the current situation. Not the situation, as you see the picture here, but the situation of your actual business. How is your business faring right now? Now, this information is pretty relevant to determining how your current situation holds up to the goals and objectives that you've set during that step 2. This helps you understand what are your potential barriers and roadblocks. What are some of your strengths here at play? What you may want to do is to create a list of the obstacles that are hindering your success while identifying the assets you could use as an advantage. These factors will really guide you as you build your sales plan. And if you've ever done a SWOT analysis, this really comes close to doing the same exercise, but within more of the context of your selling and of your sales initiative. Getting to the halfway point, step 5 is about starting a sales forecasting. Now, sales forecasting, as we know, is really a report that helps you predict what a salesperson, a team, a company will sell, whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually. And while I understand it is finicky, and it can, however, help your company make better decisions. When it comes to hiring, budgeting, prospecting, or even setting goals. But keep in mind that as we've all experienced firsthand, have gone through it, COVID and the pandemic have really thrown what I call a monkey wrench into this notion of predictability in forecasting. The amount of clients that I work with when we talk about how have you done in the last few years and how are you going to do over the next few years, where they have this gap where it's really hard for them to forecast. because the way that your business has operated over the last 2 to 3 years has been very different than before that point if your business existed before the pandemic. And I can assure you, as we are um, learning to live with COVID, because I don't think that we have moved on the pandemic or dealing with COVID, the business environment is changing as well, and your ability of forecasting or predicting may be as good as predicting, elections that are happening these days. It's going to be full of potential gaps and maybe not full information. So as much as sales forecasting is important as part of your sales planning, don't be too hard on yourself if there are certain external factors that are impeding you from meeting those forecasts that you've established for yourself. One of the things that I've noticed a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs tend to skip over is really identifying the gaps that exist in their business. Because in reality, it is hard to have a perspective that looks into your business and the things that you're not doing well. So really, when you're identifying gaps in your business, it's important to consider what your company needs now and what you might need in the future. And by first identifying the skills you feel either you or your employee need to reach your goals, and second, you want to evaluate the skills of your current employee and seeing where that gap may exist. One of the biggest challenges that small businesses are facing today is a labor shortage. And the challenge isn't that we can't find people to work. It's we having a hard time finding qualified people, competent and experienced people to work in our businesses. And so when it is difficult to hire, one of the ways that you could overcome that challenge is by using training as a way to upskill and improve the knowledge and skill set of individuals within your organization, whether those individuals are yourselves or employees of yours. And this will help you not only add value and retainment to your employees, but it also help you fill in that gap that may exist in your operation that you're having a really hard time finding someone to hire. Something that I am naturally gifted with, which is the idea of coming up, ideating with new initiatives. I, just on a side note, recently took a course on strategic leadership and innovation. And part of that Schule course that I took, it helped me identify within the spectrum of innovation, what function do I have lots of preference? And apparently, to nobody's surprise who knows me, coming up with a bunch of new ideas is something that I really enjoy doing. But in reality, many industry trends are cyclical when we think about business trends. And the idea of in and out of style, phases in and out. But when you are building your sales plan, the notion of ideating new initiative is really based on opportunities that you may have maybe passed on in previous years. It could be initiatives that maybe the timing wasn't right, or initiatives that you've been working on for a while, but now it's time to execute. Whatever those are, it is, if your business exclusively focuses on word of mouth and let's say social media marketing in the past, maybe it's time to consider other forms of marketing. Maybe adding things like a webinar or a special promotions or anything else that could attract new business, maybe something worth considering and adding to your plan. Now, of course, Rome wasn't built in a day, nor by one person. And so involving the people, the stakeholders, individuals, groups, organizations who ultimately have a vested interest in your company is important. These people are typically investors, employees, or even customers, and really often have a deciding power in your business. And really towards the end of your sales planning process, involving stakeholders from maybe different departments that affect your outcomes, such as maybe marketing or operations and product and things of that nature, is going to be really key in having a successful sales plan. It will lead to an efficient and actionable sales planning process when you involve all these individuals who are impacted and invest and have vested interest in your business. And then last but by no means least, step 9, all about outlining the action items. It's great to have a plan, but a plan that you don't execute, it can become a pipe dream. And so once you have implemented the strategy to create your sales planning process, really the final step is about outlining your action items. It's really about using your company's capacity and quota numbers, build a list of steps that really take you through your sales process. Examples of action items are like writing a sales script or identifying industry competitors, or maybe even strategizing new initiatives or perks. But the one thing to keep in mind is that sales planning shouldn't be a static exercise. And you shouldn't really be ending it with creating just a document that just collects dust. This should be a dynamic exercise that you are doing on a regular basis. Of course, I'm by no means suggesting that you go through this process on a monthly or even quarterly basis, or even semi-annual. For a sales plan to really be effective, it does need to have a bit of time for the plan to actually see the results of it. But having a process within your organizational culture where you are revisiting this topic on an annual basis will really help you, because one of the things that is constant, or that you could definitely count on, is that nothing will remain the same, and that change is inevitable, meaning that your business today will look very different in a few years from now. And your customers' needs might change as well. How many of us thought that a program like the one that we are all attending today would be done on Zoom? If we think about it pre-COVID, we'd probably all be in the same room right now, and I'd be standing in front of a podium with a projector and really talking to you by pointing to the screen. But in this case, I'm just sitting in my own home office and using the pointer and the clicker here as my finger to point things out. The point I'm trying to make is that if you sit on a plan that you've created and you're not revisiting it, then that plan is really useless to you. And it needs to be part of your culture of updating and reviewing on a regular basis. I'm going to stop here before I move into change management. I know there's a lot of information that I just dumped on everyone in a pretty quick amount of time. I want to stop here and see and get a gauge where everybody is when it comes to sales planning before I move on to change management. How do you guys feel about doing your sales planning by starting by going through the steps in creating one?
Would anybody like to volunteer and share?
I know in a group of 50 plus people, it could be quite scary to share. So don't feel obligated to speak. Feel free if you want to share your thoughts in the chat if it's easier. But I want to make sure that if anyone has a question, anyone's got something wasn't clear, before I move on to the change management topic, that we address it. And if you prefer waiting till the end to do it, that's of course quite okay with me as well.
Okay, so we have a comment in the chat. Mami says, slightly intimidating because I'm not sure how to execute and plan at the same time.
That's a really great question. You don't have to do them at the same time. I don't actually suggest that you plan and execute at the same time. The idea here is you want to take a step back and plan first, get your ducks aligned, figure out what it is that you're going to do, and then start executing it one step at a time. You could create that action plan in step 9 and just literally follow those steps in making sure that you're able to execute it. And keep it simple. You don't need to make it complicated. I found one of the biggest challenges that I see people when it comes time to, whether it's writing a sales plan or a business plan, is they want to get it perfectly the first time. And that gives you writer's block. It makes it challenging for you to do it. So my suggestion is, don't try to write the perfect plan. Just put it down on paper first and then work on improving it afterwards. That will make writing and planning it a lot easier, and then on the execution. Mary, I know you put your hand up, so I want to give you the opportunity to share, to ask whatever you would like.
So for startup businesses, like who are sort of like still in the ideation phase, but that haven't like started operating yet, what would you recommend with regards to developing a sales plan, particularly when you don't have any like data to have like a sales forecast? And also, you had also mentioned connecting involved stakeholders. How does that look like as well?
Okay, great questions, Mary. So when you are a startup, when you don't have a lot of the data points in forecasting and so forth, typically speaking, you do have resources around how does a business in your industry of your size, what are some of the data that exist in the market? Unless you're telling me that you're creating a brand new market that's never existed before, to which I say good for you, because then you're paving the way. Chances are a similar business exists in your industry. So from a starting point, what you want to do is you want to do research on what others have done in your space, and then kind of modify it or contextualize it to your business, to your size, to your market, if they fall outside of those. And then the idea is, at the beginning, you want to make set some realistic goals based on your research as a form of forecast and a planning. And then you want, as a startup, to collect data very earlier on, because you don't have a database of data. You want to start collecting that data through technology, if you're using a CRM or other method that allows you to collect the data. And you probably want to have a review on a quarterly basis in the first couple of years to leverage the data that you're building up in fine-tuning your plan and giving you a much more realistic plan to execute on. With regards to involving stakeholders, the best thing to do is just to bring them onto the conversation. Typically speaking, when you are a startup, you don't have customers that yet to be stakeholders, but likelihood that you have advisors, investors, family members, friends that are supporting or helping you. those are all stakeholders into your business. And so by having a regular conversation with them and dialogue, it will help you see through their perspective things that you may not have considered, which ultimately not only will help you recognize some of those blind spots or gaps that you haven't recognized or opportunity that you hadn't considered. Hope that answers your question. Sean.
Sean.
I would like to give my opinion as to how to execute and plan.
Sure, of course, Sean.
Because execute comes before plan, I would assume that execution means that I already have an idea of something that I want to execute and it's already in motion. And if it's already in motion because I wasn't too sure as to how or what would work from that, I would be planning on how things, taking data as I'm executing, planning on how I can improve or make changes as we are going through the process. So we're executing while planning at the same time, so simultaneously. That's only in the context if I had a plan prior to me attempting to execute anything. But if it was the plan versus the execute, means that I would have to, plan to execute. That's how I would plan to execute, and plan.
Thank you so much for your insight and your thoughts, Sean. The only thing that I will just caution everyone is planning and executing at the same time can be a very risky and difficult task to take on. If I understand Sean's perspective, what I'm hearing is that if you already have a plan, then the best thing you could do is execute. But as you're executing, if you are seeing that there are certain things about your plan that's not working, then it's always worth going back, stopping the execution, going back to the plan, making the slight changes and tweaks that you need to, and then going back to the execution. You don't want to be planning and executing all at the same time because you might miss something that is critical. And I know it's counterintuitive to think that multitasking is a good thing, but innovation dies when multitasking happens. So keep that in mind.
But the key thing is that when you are executing, you have already planned what you were going to do before that.
Yes.
Execution meaning that I already have set plans of what I wanted to do and that the attempts was to try to improve on the execution or to learn or to gather data from the exchange. So if we're selling something online or we're doing messaging or business B2B, B2 or B2 consumer, we already have a plan on how we want to execute it. But through that forms of execution, our plan is to try to figure out how to improve the execution, how to create more success on the plan that we're trying to build. When you say execution, and you say plan, the plan is to execute. And if you don't have a plan, you can't.
No, Sean, I do apologize, but the plan isn't to execute. The plan is a plan, which is sort of a roadmap that you create through the different areas of your business that require some planning. And then the execution is executing the plan. So you gotta understand that when you're executing the plan that you've created. Now, if you want to improve on your plan, that's an entirely different process that you are doing in completely separation of the plan and the execution. Yes, the execution will give you data points of successes or failures that then you use in your re-optimization of the plan, but you go back to the planning stage. It's not a plan to execute. The plan is being executed, and the execution gives you inputs that allows you to go back to the plan and make the changes that you need to then go back to executing that new plan. But at no point should you plan and execute at the same time. You are doing two things that need to happen independently of one another and sequential to the order of things that you do. I want to address Amy's question on the chat about how do you research what others have done in your space. Great question. One of the best ways you could do it is, well, by Googling your industry and any reports that may exist in your industry. So use Google and the internet as your starting point. One of the best ways, though, in my opinion, to collect some real life data and experiences is through networking. Use LinkedIn to find someone that that does or is in a business that you're in, and ask if you could just pick their brain, right? That let them know that you're starting a business and you would love to learn about what they do. It's incredible the amount of the willingness of people, a business leader, to share their wisdom and experience to anyone who's genuinely is interested in learning. It is part of our DNA as human beings to want to help and give. And as individuals, we tend to be afraid to ask. And so don't be afraid of asking. Know that not everybody will say yes, but if you are in business, you should recognize that you'll get many more no's than you do yeses anyway. So asking shouldn't be the preventive element of you in the learning. Okay. Any other questions before I move on?
Arash, there's another question. Is there a template or example of a
Yes.
plan that you can share?
Yeah, I saw that, Natasha. Sorry
Natasha.
that I missed it. It's just the chat was moved on already. There are lots of great templates available online. I'm not gonna, suggest one or the other. I think with a simple Google search on sales plan templates or sales plan example, you're gonna get what might feel a infinite amount of plans and templates for you, because everyone's business might be a little different. What one person's template will find good, another may feel differently about it. So it's very subjective to your business and what is important to you. Okay, great questions, great comments. I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on this topic. Let's continue and let's talk about change management. Now, what is change management, you may ask? Well, it's really a framework for managing the people side of change. As I mentioned not too long ago, when we talked about step 9 of building a sales planning, it's that nothing will remain the same, which is another way of saying that change is a constant. In my life, I've only figured out 2 things that are constant in our entire lives across the globe. Doesn't matter where you are on this planet and who you are on this planet. The 2 things that I figured out is that change is constant and death. I know some of you will say taxes, but I can assure you there are places in the world where people don't pay taxes. And there are also people who do not pay taxes, even in places they have to pay taxes. So that the whole tax thing doesn't really hold the argument, in my opinion. But change is a guaranteed and death is a guarantee. And so think about it from the perspective of what you are doing when you are establishing a new sales plan, a new sales strategy. Anything that is new that you haven't done yet before is going to create change in how you move forward with it. Think about it from this context. If you don't have a sales plan right now, you are following a sales process that's not driven by a plan that you've created. So you must be doing certain things in a certain order. Let's call it A, B, and C is what you're doing today. Once you take the steps and put some thought behind what is your sales plan, what are you going to do, and what are the goals and all the things, you're going to get to a point, as in step 9, which is going to be establishing a new sequence of actions that you're going to take. Well, I can assure you that that sequence of actions that you will be taking is going to be very different from what you've been doing. Remember, the A, B, and C that you're currently doing. So what's going to happen is the new plan is going to be the XYZ plan. I know I'm being very creative in my usage of letters in comparison. Sometimes innovation is about keeping things simple. And so now that the new plan is X, Y, and Z, what's the likelihood that you feel confident about doing that plan? What's the likelihood that you have experience doing that plan? If you've done a really different plan, especially if you've never had one, I can assure you XYZ is going to sound very different than ABC. Now, why is change management important? Why is change management about the people side of change? Well, like I said, change is a constant in life, but it's up there with death and public speaking as three of the scariest things as human beings are asked to do. Now, of course, we can't do much about death because we will all die. Sorry to tell you all. And we could do something about public speaking. You don't have to speak public, which may be a little difficult if you're running a business, generally speaking. However, change is something that will happen whether you want it to happen or not. And your fears around change, in reality, is pretty irrational. It's even more irrational when you're asking someone else within your company to change for you. That's even scarier, because why do I need to change? And so understanding that change is something that we can run away from. And we need to embrace change. We need to be able to have a process that allows us to understand why the change is needed, what's in it for me, and how can I make sure that that change sticks? Because I can assure you that if you're used to doing A, B, C, and now you're trying X, Y, Z, how many times will you, how many times do you need to fail before you go back to A, B, C and saying, oh, X, Y, Z is not going to work? Well, it's the same question people ask themselves come in about a month and a half from now, when the January, let's get your gym membership will come into effect, because what's the one thing everybody wants to do in the new year, which is the resolution of getting healthy and working out. And so, of course, the gym memberships, are a hot ticket come holiday time, come end of the year, beginning of the new year. But how many people are still sticking with their gym routine come, I don't know, mid-February? Probably a lot less than those who were motivated at the beginning of the year. And a lot of it has to do with human behavior. We like our comfort zone. We like the things that we keep doing over and over and over again. We like our routines, which is typically why most of us have a morning routine. We do things in a sequence, in an order. Most of us have the same breakfast, right? Eat at the same time. Why is that? Because it would be exhausting for our brain to have to make decision every time we have to do something. So the brain finds easier ways of coping with that. And that's where, routines come into play. But routines in business is a business killer. Because why? Change happens anyway. And you're either going to be part of the change or you're going to be left behind. And I can assure you, none of you want to be left behind in your change. So what can we do about change? Well, I got 5 letters for you. ADKAR. A stands for awareness, D for desire, K for knowledge, A for ability, and R for reinforcement. So let me talk to you about each one and why they're each important. We can all agree that we don't know what we don't know. But once we are aware of something, it is very difficult to forget it. Which is why the first letter in any change needs to be an awareness. It's the A. It's that awareness and understanding of the need for change. Now, understanding a need for change isn't sufficient for change to happen. Because the other thing that we are as human beings is pretty selfish. And this is not me insulting you. This is me telling you a fact about all of us. We're all care about only ourselves. Meaning that until you figure your why does this change matter to me? What's in it for me? What do I have to gain from this change? It's very unlikely that you will do anything about it. Regardless of how aware you are and how much of the other elements that I haven't talked about you have, desire drives behavior. And if there's no desire, there's no behavior. And if there's no behavior, there's no action. And if there's no action, there's no change. So really important before you do anything that you spend some time in that self-discovery of the reason behind it and the reason why it should matter to you. Once those two things are looked after, then you're going to have a gap. Because if the change is a new change, if the awareness of that change is new, chances are there is something you don't know that you need to learn and gain. So think about it from this context of, your awareness is that if I want to have a successful business, I need to have a sales plan. So it's an awareness of needing a sales plan. But why do you need a sales plan? Maybe the reason behind it is maybe your revenue hasn't been up to where you want it to be. Maybe you haven't grown as fast as you wanted to. Maybe you're a startup and you need something to execute. And until you have a plan, you're just an idea, not a business. Whatever that desire, that personal reason is, that's for you to know. But once that happens, then you have to take on this task of creating a new sales plan. And as someone says, it could be kind of scary to do something you've never done before. And this is where you go in to gain knowledge. So a program like this helps you with your knowledge. It builds the frameworks, the principles, the information, the processes to help you in creating the change that you were working on. But in the same way that you cannot learn how to ride a bicycle by just reading a book about riding a bicycle or swimming, nothing happens until you try. And ability is all about taking that knowledge and practicing it, executing it. And like I tell my kids, you are not born with knowledge, with the ability of doing things you've never done before. It's just, very few of us are, Mozarts or, any geniuses that have been, and there's only been a few in our entire history. So you can imagine how rare having ability naturally is. Which means that you got to be realistic. You're going to fall a few times before you know how to ride your bicycle. You're going to need some floaties. You're going to feel like you're drowning when you start swimming for the first time before you build the confidence and the knowledge that, you know what, I'm not going to drown. So don't be afraid. Fear is going to be what's stopping you from doing. And doing is the only thing that's going to make the fear go away. The last thing about change management that is critical is that last element, the R, the reinforcement. Change doesn't happen overnight. There are many different theories out there. I recently heard from a reputable source that to create a habit, you need 63 times when you are practicing it. And I don't mean just trying it once, saying, oh, I practiced it, that was once. No, I mean like literally trying it really hard, 63 times. And then that ability becomes a skill that you have. So the biggest challenge with change happening once you've done all the 4 first things correctly is to go back to the way you used to do things. That means that you're giving up way too quickly. If your goal is to be healthy come January, don't give up come mid-February, because you won't see the results of that until probably the springtime, not middle of winter. So your commitment to the change will really drive your ability of making sure that the change actually happens and is sustained. Otherwise, you will go back to doing the same thing you were and hoping for a different outcome, which we all know is the fastest thing to insanity. Now, you might say, Rash, well, why do I care about each one of these letters? Well, they're there for a reason. They're sequential for a reason. And yes, maybe this framework looks at it from a more of a one-person business or a small team. But in reality, change is something that we do on a regular basis, and it's an individual commitment that we have to make. Change is a personal choice. It's not anybody else's choice. Nobody can make you change. You are the only person who can agree and decide to change. So if you don't have the awareness and desire, well, you're really going to delay everything because you're going to drag your feet. You're not going to really be involved or interested. If you don't have knowledge and ability, well, you don't have the elements in place to really get the results that you want, to really make the impact, to see the utilization and the conversion of all your efforts. And of course, without the reinforcement, you will revert back to your old way of things. And like I said, doing the same thing and hoping for different results is not something anyone should seek to be doing. If you do have a team and you need your team to follow the change, recognize that you, as their boss, as their manager, you are critical in making sure that change happens. And the reason is because, well, first and foremost, I hope your employees trust you. Because that trust goes a long way. If the boss is doing versus telling, that goes a long way in making sure that change happens. Because you're going to be at the center of that change. You're going to be leading that change. And you need to make sure that everyone around you sees that you are close to it and you're making it. Along the way, you're going to be the key individual here that's going to deal with any resistance to change. And I'll tell you, resistance to change is a near certitude. The more people need to change, the more likelihood that resistance to change will happen. And I'll tell you, because that resistance to change is an irrational fear, logic or using rational ideas in solving with that change won't solve the problem. I'll give you a little insight. The best thing you could do to mitigating resistance for change for those who are really resistant is to offer them a safe space to let them themselves understand why they're resistant, while allowing you to also understand it along the same path of their own self-discovery. And I can assure you that the majority of situations where people are resistant to change, that resistance naturally and magically goes away when people feel the sense of having been heard. Feeling heard is a magical way of getting change, resistance to change go away. And then you as the business leader will allow you to build the support, to build the team. And that's why you are the preferred person when it comes to leading any change initiatives. Of course, I'm not going to leave you alone with not having the 10 tactics for resistance to change. And I just noticed that number 6 is missing there. I do apologize. I just noticed it there. but I could tell you what it is so that you don't feel as though you're missing out. It is about showing the benefits in a real and tangible way. But otherwise, you have 9 other strategies that you could see here that will help you with managing the resistance. As I said, resistance is something that you could pretty much bank on, especially the larger the group. Any questions on change management? I know it's a can be a scary topic. It is a very big topic. I am a certified change management practitioner, if you haven't figured that out yet. So I could probably speak for days on change management, not to say that anyone wants to hear me speak about change management, but does anyone have questions on that topic? All right. There's no questions. Oh, no.
Joyce.
Joyce. Go ahead, Joyce. I'd like to hear your question or your comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, from experience so far, I used to believe, and which I say often, that human beings are the most difficult people to deal with, right?
Sure.
So I'm like, and for that reason, I have this entrepreneurship spirit inside of me, but I'm like, how do I manage people? How do I manage people? And that thought alone kind of takes me back to my shell. How can I overcome it? And at the same time, what do you suggest? Like I heard you now when you said when people feel heard, it takes away resistance. I have that in my toolbox now. Like you need to make them feel that, okay, I see you, I hear you, and I understand you, I feel you. But is that alone enough? Because I know and I believe largely that you want to create a positive work environment. This is where you spend most of your days, right? Most of the hours. You want to create a positive environment where everybody feels secure, safe, and at that level, their best is brought to bear on the job, and everybody's happy. What do you say? What do you think? What would your advice be? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for your question. Let me see if I could understand your question correctly before I answer it, just to make sure that I do answer the question you're asking. So what I'm hearing is you're asking what are some of the ways that you could bring change and provide an environment for your employees to have a great work experience so that they could deliver the best type of service back to your clients. Is that in a nutshell what you're asking me, Joyce?
Yes, in a nutshell, yes, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, how do you get them to like cooperatively move forward?
Yeah. So let me answer the second question first, because I think it addresses maybe some of your other questions. So there are 3 sort of sequential things to do when you are deciding to enact a change in your organization. The first thing that you can do in making sure that change happens is, like I said, to lead by example. There is such power when employees see the boss, the owner, doing what is being asked of them to do. More importantly, it's about being transparent about your journey through the change. You want to be transparent about your successes and your failures. You want to show them that you don't have all the answers, that it is okay not to have the answers, that your expectation is that you're going to try this, and you're going to make mistakes, and that is completely okay with me, because I am trying and I am making mistakes. And if it's okay for me to do it, it's okay for you to do it. The second thing you can do, and or you should do, is to get as much engagement from your employees as possible. And what I mean by that is bring them into the conversation. Talk to them, get their opinion, get their thoughts. And I don't mean that you need to take their opinions and thoughts and say, okay, well, I got to make sure that I make everybody happy. It's not about that. The idea about engagement is, we don't need to have people to agree with everything we do. We just need them to understand. And if we understand, then we have a path forward. And so by providing your team the opportunity to communicate to you their ideas, their challenges, what they think is good, what they think is not good, will naturally give you a better perspective. But more importantly, it will give your employee this sense of ownership and empowerment. And that is a powerful tool for the change to happen, because not only will they be the champion of that change, but they will also indirectly cause peer pressure, and this is positive peer pressure, on those individuals who might be resistant to the change, because maybe they're like, well, I don't care that the boss is doing, right, if nobody else is doing it. But if the boss is doing it, Jim is doing it, and Bob is doing it, and Janice is doing it, and everybody's doing it, well, maybe I'm going to do it too. And then the resistance to change, those who are going to be resistant to change, like I said, the most important thing to realize is that fear is not rational. And so you're not going to be able to come with a logical plan to solve for that problem. It's not going to work. Even if you say, if you don't do it, I'll fire you, it's still not going to make them do it. So none of these strategies ever work. The reason why the notion of feeling heard works is because a lot of these people who are resistant to change don't even really know why they're resistant to change. And they're afraid that if they are resistant, or if they communicate why they're resistant, if they don't do it, that something negative is going to happen, i.e., I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get yelled at by my boss, and all those negative feelings that they may have, that increases their fear and their resistance to doing it. It's counterintuitive, right? You think that because of those things that should make them do it, but it doesn't. It actually causes them to be even more fearful and less to do it. Which is why when you create an environment that is safe for them to really come to a self-understanding first and foremost of their resistance, it helps them either recognize how foolish they may be or how meaningless that fear is, but it also provides you the opportunity of understanding what that fear is. And because of that understanding, that self-awareness that allows, we tend to then realize that, oh, well, maybe I'm being silly. Maybe I am over exaggerating, or, feeling this way because of other reasons, and that should be fine. And in my experience, 60% of resistance to change naturally goes away once the person feels heard and understood. The other about 40%, I would say about out of the remaining 40%, 30%, 25 to 30% of the remaining, well, you actually have now, through an understanding, an idea and a path forward in how to solve for that resistance, right? You have a potential roadmap that allows you to then work with that individual in helping them. And then in reality, you're going to get about 10 to 15% who have dig in their heels into the ground, and they're just resistance, and nothing you could do or say will ever change that. And when you're dealing with those people, then you kind of have to make those tough decisions as business owner of, well, what am I going to do about it? And unfortunately, sometimes you have to make the tough decision of, well, maybe you're no longer a good fit for us. And that's just the reality of business owners. Joyce, did that address your both parts of your questions, or have I missed the part?
I think you safely address how to get employees to work with you. Just you're on the same page. Yeah, I get that part. Transparency and leading by example.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Very
other
powerful tools.
Yes, thank you kindly. So I think the other side of my question was, how do you create that? Because my experience, you as a leader, you might not have that. People might feel okay with you, right? In terms of, okay, I feel safe, I feel secure with this person, she gives me listening here. But then within the organization, you'll be surprised there's still some level of toxicity going on. How do you totally handle that without posing a threat, without threatening anyone, you're going to lose your job, but to let you know that this is my ideology? Like, we are human beings, we are here to work. Let's make the best of the time we have for ourselves and be happy, that so that our energy is at optimum. But you thank you. Okay.
No, I think I understand. Listen, you're right. Human beings are very complex animals, and we can't make everybody happy in life in general. I think, and this is true in general in communication, and probably as much in sales, because sales is just a communication skill at the end of the day. It's really about, what is your intent? At the core, what is it that you mean behind what you do, what you say? Your intent is very important, because one of the things that we tend to forget is that communication is only 7% verbal. That means that what you are hearing from me, the words that I'm using, is only communicating 7%. What you actually, the communication you're getting from me is my body language and my tone. Those communicate significantly more. And the way that your body language and tone communicates, it's through your intent. I'll give you a very simple example that we've all had in our life at some point or another, especially if we've been in a relationship. The "I am fine" answer to "How are you?" We all know that "I am fine" can mean a lot of different things. It could be like, "I'm fine. This is great. I'm having a great time." It could be, "I am fine. This is great. I'm having a great time." Can we agree that I use the exact same words for both? Did I mean the same thing? Did I have the same intent or different intent? What was communicated to you in the first time versus the second one? And keep in mind that I use the exact same words. So when you understand that the intent behind your words actually communicates more, the challenge that we face is when our intent doesn't align with the words we use, which is why when I say "I am fine," right, you know that the words I'm using are in complete conflict with what I'm communicating to you. So sometimes, we have a very natural sense of when there's a disconnect between the words and what's being communicated, that someone's not being genuine, somebody not being honest. And that's where I think sometimes the challenge happens in communication, is we think we're using the right words and we're communicating correctly, but our intent through our body language and tone is saying something completely different. And people then, have a hard time trusting that disconnect. Any other question?
There are a few. There was one question. Let me just scroll right up here. What about overcoming fear? Amy is asking that regarding change management.
are we talking about our own fear, or are we talking about overcoming other people's fears? Just so that I know which fears we're focusing on. Or maybe I'll talk to both of them.
My own.
Oh, your own
Maybe
fear.
saying her.
How to overcome your own fear regarding change management. I think your own fear of change management is probably tied into the first two letters, the A and the D. I swear I know those letters like the back of my hand. Are you aware of why you need to change? Is my first question that I would want you to ask yourself. The second being, if you know the reason for that change, do you have that desire behind doing it? Do you understand what that change will actually do for you in a very selfish way? If that desire benefits someone else, then it naturally will stop you from then moving forward. Now, if your awareness and your desire is high, then my guess is that your fear is tied in to potentially a gap that you have in your skills, your knowledge, and then right after that, your ability. Just think about, how scary it is to do something for the first time, and how much that could stop you from actually doing anything. The best thing that we could do when it comes to fear is not to be afraid of it, not to ignore it, but to recognize it's there, know that it's okay, right? Give it the room to exist, but not give it so much power that it stops us from doing anything. Sometimes, if you still can't do it, this is where bringing in your stakeholders, bringing in your advisors, people who are vested, in your business, in the success of your business. Sometimes you just need the kick in the butt to get going. I'm speaking, from personal experience. Sometimes we are our own biggest saboteurs, where we are the ones stopping us from doing things. And so sometimes we just need a reality check. We just need somebody to just tell it to us as is. And that sometimes is all that we need to start doing. And sometimes we need someone to hold our hand to do at the beginning, just to feel more comfortable. My best suggestion with dealing with fear is assess whether it's as a result of an awareness and a desire that's not there. If those are in place, then is it the fact that you don't have the skills or the knowledge? If that's the case, then take a course, read a book. But if you have that skills and that knowledge, and it's your own confidence in doing, then seek external help to help you get over that initial barrier of doing. And once you do it once, you'll recognize it's not that scary. You'll want to do it a second time. You'll learn from the things that don't work, but you also learn from the things that do work, so that you could progress and develop that ability step by step. Hope that answers your question. Any other question on the chat, Alina?
No question, but Earl has a kind comment for you. I appreciated the talk about change management. I also like ADKAR. So thank you for that, Earl.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's very intuitive once you know it. So it's a great tool. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is about this idea of sales 2.0. I know we've talked a lot about the planning process. We talked about how to make sure that we enact that plan into reality, into tomorrow's process and ways that we do things. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is about this idea of what is sales in 2023 and beyond. By the way, I'm not recommending you buy Sales 2.0 for Dummies. It's just trying to put a visual that represented what I wanted to do. This actually felt like just very appropriate. So there are a lot of misconceptions today about what sales is and what salespeople do and what they should do and shouldn't do and what they should accept and shouldn't accept. Things like this idea of ABC, always be closing, or taking no, or not taking no for an answers. Those are really outdated perspective on selling. This is selling back in a day where your only source of information was the sales rep. I mean, if anyone on this call is old enough to know the world before the internet, yes, I am that old that I know the world before the internet, then you know that if you wanted to buy something, you know, a big ticket item, I don't care if it's a car or a television or a VCR back when that was a big ticket item, you really didn't have Google to search. You didn't have, you know, Amazon to read reviews. What you had was a store that you would go to and you would talk to an expert, which it would be called a sales professional, salesperson, who would tell you all about the features of this product and why this one's great and this one isn't. And then you would then learn from that salesperson, and then you would make your decision. And unfortunately, salespeople develop a really bad image selling you, of being like that used car salesperson, that really greasy, really no ethics person who will sell you that, excuse my language, piece of shit and make you think it's the best thing that you've ever bought in your life until you actually use it and you see how much of a crap it is that you bought, which then makes you believe that all salespeople are crooks and they're all in it for themselves and all they care is about making their money and selling you something that you never really needed in the first place. Now, how many of you think about salespeople in that image, in that context? Yeah, a lot of people do. And I can understand why, when it comes to selling, people feel dirty. People feel like, oh, I gotta shower afterwards. I just feel gross. But the reality is that that's not selling. That's anything but selling. Selling in its truest form is about solving problems, helping people solve their problems. And it is completely okay to take no for an answer. I want you to take no's for an answers and yes for an answer. What I don't want you to accept are maybes. There's a saying in sales that says, yeses and nos will make you money. It's the maybes that will kill you. Because what does maybe mean? Maybe I'll buy, maybe I won't buy. Maybe I'll give you an answer, maybe I won't give you an answer. It's this infinite limbo that drags you on, that kills your mood and your spirit, and makes you not believe in anything that is good. So every time you hear a no, I want you to hear the cash register sign going cha-ching, because in reality, it takes so many no's for you to get a yes. Not so many maybes to get your yes, but so many no's to get your yes. So take the no, it's okay. Realize that whatever product or service you're selling or providing is not for a majority of people. If 2 out of 10 people buy your product, you should feel really happy, right? You are selling quite a bit. Your conversion rate is amazing. 20% close rate, anybody will want that. Which means that for that to happen, for you to be so happy to close 20%, you need to hear 80% of the people that says, no, not for me, no. So don't be afraid of the no. Going back to intent, if there's anything I want you to take away from selling, is that your intent will dictate what happens in that sales conversation. If your intent is to sell your product, nobody will buy it. If your intent is to persuade someone, they won't be persuaded. Whatever your intent is, know that that's what you're going to communicate, and put yourself in the position on the other side. Do you like to be sold? Does anybody on this call likes to be sold? I'm not raising my hand because even as a sales professional for over 20 years, I do not like to be sold. Nobody likes to be sold. So don't try to persuade people to buy your product or your service. Nobody will. Seek to understand. Seek to understand the problems and the challenges of your client. Focus on them,
Arash,
not on you. Yes.
why don't you like to be sold?
Nobody likes to be sold.
No, I said, why don't you like to be sold?
Because I don't like to, well, I don't like to be forced to buy something that I have no need for, that I have no use for, and feel like I got tricked to buy something. Being sold feels like you got tricked, and nobody likes to feel tricked.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so a lot of people think about selling is about persuading people to buy. It's not. It's about seeking to understand how your product or service can help them. And so along the same way, don't be afraid of using social media. And I don't know what the demographics of, the 50 people on the calls are, assuming that if most of you are millennials or younger, that technology shouldn't really, in general, be very scary, let alone social media. But social media is about amplifying your brand, amplifying your message, communicating to your network why you're an expert, why people should know about you. It's not about selling your product, it's about your brand and getting yourself and creating an awareness in a very effective forum. And remember, what you think is important about your product, your service, how good you are, how great your company is, how many awards you won, nobody cares. The only person that cares about everything that I just mentioned is you and nobody else. Maybe your parents, maybe your partner. But beyond that close network, nobody gives a shit. Excuse my language again. And and the reason I'm being blunt about it is how many of us start our sales pitches about how great I am. I have won awards. I am the best. My product is incredible. My service will do all these things for you. The problem is anytime you talk about what matters to you, you're forgetting the most important thing is that it's not what matters to you that matters, it's what your customer thinks is important about your service and product. And if you lead by advertising how great you are, you're missing the opportunity to learn about the problems of your customers. And learning about the problems of your customers as the starting point in identifying what are those challenges, i.e., seeking to understand, not to persuade, is your best approach in not only making your prospective client feel heard. Remember how important feeling heard is in dealing with resistance and change. The same works really well in selling. When your prospective customers feel heard and understood, then whatever you say after the fact will matter to them. But if somebody feels as though you haven't listened to a word that they said, that you do not understand what their problems are, how likely are they to respect what you're going to say or even care what you're going to say? This much. Because everybody's got problems, and their problems, I can assure you, are way more important than your problems in their perspective. And if you're not seeking to understand them, then all you care about is you. And if all you care about is you, your prospective customer does not care about that, does not care about making you the money, does not care about getting you the commission, does not care about your business growth. They care about their problem, their business, their challenges. And if you don't take a customer-centric approach with dealing with your customers, then you're going to sound like a used sleazy car salesman that's trying to persuade you to buy a product, even though you do not understand what their problem is. So if nothing else for you guys to take away, and this is usually the one takeaway that I always leave at the end of any of my presentation, is that your intent will dictate your success when it comes to selling. And if your intent is to sell versus understand, you're going to be spinning your wheels and getting a lot of people who are going to immediately say, not interested, before they've even heard what you have to say, because all they're smelling is your commission breath. And they know that when you're approaching with a commission breath, that you are only caring about you and not them, and they don't care about it. So that is Sailing 2.0. I am going to stop right here and open the floodgates to the questions and comments. I think that there's a few on the chat, Elena, so I'll let you sort of let me know what those are.
Perfect. So Chris is asking a question. How would you differentiate the role of marketing or business development in identifying a potential customer's need as opposed to a role in sales in what sounds very familiar?
Really great question, Chris. So you gotta recognize that marketing and sales are part of the same continuum. And there are certain elements of marketing and sales that kind of overlaps. And so when you're identifying the differences in those roles, recognize that marketing takes you all the way up to a marketing qualified lead. So that a lead generation piece, that demand generation, that creating that interest and that awareness is where marketing typically stops and sales takes on. Now, some marketing department go all the way to that lead generation and provide, marketing qualified leads to sales. Other organizations, sales department take that lead generation and suspecting and lead creation part as part of their sales roles and initiative. It's really a function of how you've segmented those two departments and whose responsibility falls on whom. But typically speaking, biz dev is always sales, and what leads to a lead is done through marketing.
Great,
Hope
thank you for
the
that.
question. Yeah. Any other questions that you have on the?
So no questions in the chat, but guys, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Arash questions, or in the chat box, whatever you prefer.
I'll give the group this thing that I learned recently, this sort of like, well, people think about a chat, but recently I learned that smiling and being in a happy mood makes you 31% smarter. And so it's really important that whenever you are in an environment where you are dealing with others, that you are smiling. And the beautiful thing about it is, even if you are a grumpy individual and cannot smile naturally, your brain, you could trick your brain in making you smarter. So the challenge that I have for those who have a hard time smiling naturally is try to hold a pen in your mouth without it touching your lips. It looks like something like this. And this action of holding a pen in your mouth, which gives you the same sort of physiology of smiling, actually can trick your brain in thinking you're smiling, which automatically makes you 31% smarter. And if you're smiling, other people can be typically end up smiling, which makes them 31% smarter. And now you're in an environment of much smarter people who have a better ability and intellect of getting to a decision and understanding the value of your solution or your product or service. So always, if you go into a meeting and you're nervous, hold a pen in your mouth before going, without it touching your lips. Maybe do it in front of people if you feel comfortable. That will make everybody laugh, which is exactly the outcome that you want.
That's such a great trip. I'm definitely going to remember that one.
I'll do this in the chat for anyone that's still here. I'm gonna drop my LinkedIn page, my LinkedIn address in the chat for anyone that's interested in connecting with me. If you're all also interested in the company that I work at, Change Connect, we put out some really great content on our LinkedIn page on a regular basis, free to help you. In addition, I know Fatima mentioned some of the grant programs that you could do through the government, whether it's the CDAP program or the other program that helps you build an e-commerce website. If you are interested in the Canadian Digital Adoption Program, myself and my teammates and my firm, we are an approved CDAP advisor, helping you assess your digital needs. So if you have any questions about the program, about the cost, about what it takes to get 90% of the assessment through grant refunded and giving you access up to $100,000 in interest-free loan from the government for 6 years to use that money for any digital transformation and digital adoption into your business to create greater efficiencies, please don't hesitate to reach out. You know, we've been part of the initial start of this process in this program. We're part of the pilot program. We've done hundreds of these assessments. It's called the CDAP, Amy, the Canadian Digital Adoption Program. If you just Google CDAP, CDAP, or Canadian Digital Adoption Program, you'll see a link from the government that talks about the two different streams for which grant money has been put aside, either for businesses who have below $500,000 in revenue over the last 3 years. They qualify for the e-commerce option. But if your revenue has been at least $500,000 over the last 3 years at any point, then you qualify for the up to $100,000 in interest-free loans. The grant itself will cover 90%, up to 90% of your assessment, as long as the assessment is $15,000 and no more. If you're being charged more than $15,000, then the most you'll get is 90% of $15,000, which is $13,500 for those who need a little help in the math there. So anyway, if you have any questions around that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Happy to answer any questions there.
Super. Thank you so much, Arash, for sharing that. Yeah, so like Sonia, I would second that. It was a great presentation, an amazing session. So thank you so much for sharing all your insights, your knowledge with us, all your resources. Really appreciate you being here, for your time and your effort. Cannot thank you enough, Arash.
Listen, the pleasure was all mine. I love working with Y-Space and all these amazing business owners and entrepreneurs. You know, any time I get to give back to the community, give back to, you know, entrepreneurs and the future of, you know, our business ecosystem, it is my privilege to share, you know, what I have been able to learn over the couple of decades in my career to anyone that could value and benefit from it. And happy to connect with anyone if you're interested, and if you're not, that's totally fine as well. I hope you found this session helpful in your journey as entrepreneurs and business owners. And again, thank you to the Markham, to Y-Space, to Fatima, to Alina for including me in these amazing initiatives that you guys are always putting out for your community. So thank you again.
Thank you, Raj. In fact, on behalf of Markham Small Business Center and Space, I really, really thank you and appreciate all that you've done for us today. I will be sending your LinkedIn to all the attendees for today, as well as the recording for the session. So thank you once again. Thank you, Fatima, for being here. Really appreciate it. And to all the attendees, thank you so much for your engagement, for the conversations. It was a pleasure hosting this session for you. And I will hopefully see you next week. We have another session on customer success, which should be equally beneficial for you. So hope to see you next week. Till then, take good care of yourself and have a wonderful night. Bye, everyone.